Hello, hello. I'm so glad you guys are all here. I'm so glad this worked. I'm so glad I was just telling Kelsey that she could make some live because she works during the week, so she can't make stuff live sometimes. So I was just so happy that she was here. So hopefully this rescheduled call actually helps you guys. And thank you for just being patient and flexible with me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no worries. No worries at all. Thank you for just showing up. That's okay. Thank you. And yeah, happy Good Friday. I don't know if that's something that we just say in the US. Like, I'm not sure if that's a thing, I swear, but happy Friday before Easter, I guess. You guys know I'm in the Dominican Republic, so we do something called Semana Santa here, which is basically a whole week, and it is intense. Like, you can't even go outside without just if you don't know much about Dominican culture, it's an island in the Caribbean, so it's very intense Caribbean island. So basically, it's a whole party week. So me trying to just get some like space, and just meditate outside of the chaos. It's like always really interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I love it here, but it really is like the Wild West. Like people, there's no really rules or laws. Everybody just is like, oh, that's a suggestion. Like it's the Wild West here. It's kind of crazy. I'll have to start posting more on my Instagram and stuff about it because my lifestyle here is very interesting and very different. But anyways, I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter if you guys celebrate. I'm not hugely religious, but even this morning in my meditation, or I'm sorry, in my yoga class, in my meditation yoga, we kind of like meditated with Christ consciousness, which I thought was kind of cool. I grew up very like religious, so I'm a little bit, I don't want to say anti-religious because I don't want anybody that's religious to think, but I'm not religious, but just reconnecting with that part of myself has been an interesting journey. So anyways, but happy Easter if that lands for anybody. And if not, that's great too, like no worries at all. So of course, I've mapped out, the stuff that I want to go over today. But I do just want to give space for you guys. Because I'm in a place in my membership and in my whole business. I'm about to change my whole business model. I'm moving into digital products. Heather was kind of a big person in that. She had been doing the Rich Girl Reels challenge, and Abigail, who does that, is all about digital products. And I've been mulling over, when I sell very easily. It's not hard for me to sell or have 10, 12, 13, 14K months. Like that's pretty normal for me, even though I'm not online all the time. And I feel such a resistance and I like couldn't figure out why. And I was like, I don't think I want to do one like I want to just do digital products. I want everything to be passive, and I'm still like figuring out what that means for the membership. But if you guys have feedback or anything like that about how I can support you or anything like that, please let me know. But I'm still kind of like kicking around like how I want this membership to go. Like that's why I haven't been promoting it at all. Like there's not even a link to join in it because I'm just figuring out like what I want to do for you guys. And it's just a work in progress. But if you guys ever have feedback on that, you just let me know. But today I had thought about doing something and we might be able to just play around with it. And see how we feel about things. And then from there, I'll kind of like just intuitively go with the flow. But if there's been stuff coming up for you guys specifically around, I would love to hear. And if you don't want to share, that's okay. But just know like you can if you want to share it in the chat instead of like sharing it in the Facebook group, you can do that. Because I just kind of want to know where everyone's at if you want to share. But sometimes people come to the call and like, I don't even know what's going on, or I don't know what the problem is, or nothing, everything's great. So if there is something, and just a heads up, the thing that I have been talking about is guilt. This came up from last week's call, which I think is such a good one because so many of us, especially women, we deal with guilt on so many levels. And guys, the reason I do money is because money work is our biggest mirror. It'll bring up those big things that we need to heal, whether it's guilt or shame or worthy or whatever. That's why I do money work because that's what brings things to the surface the quickest. And I imagine that when I said guilt, some of you were probably like, yeah, maybe. And then some of you probably weren't. But I'm so curious when I said shame, right? Shame is one of those ones that I have to ease into because nobody likes to be like, I have shame. But to me, guilt and shame kind of go hand in hand and kind of just deep diving into what is shame? Like, why do we have shame? Where does it come from? And if there is any shame around where we're at with money and or our business and or guilt, and see like the overlap, right? And I'm going to do some really cool things with you guys today. So that's what I was thinking about doing. But if you guys have something that you want to bring to this call, feel free to drop it in the chat. You don't have to, but just know that I am watching the chat. And if you have anything you want to say, you can. Yeah. So I'm curious if you guys just want to like raise your hand or drop in the chat, whatever's easiest. Who here thinks they have guilt around money? And I don't want to, I'm being ambiguous for a reason. And Margot, I know you're in the car, so maybe you can't say, but that's okay. But if you have guilt, specifically the conversation that we were having was guilt around, I think it was like making money easily, or like, or being around people that feel like, well, you have to work hard, like especially our families or our partners or whatever. Like I have friends, you know, not only do I have friends, but I also live in developing countries. And so for me, guilt is a big part of the work that I have to do on myself, because I'm like, not only am I white, you know, from the United States, earning in dollars, living in developing countries, and also I charge extremely high prices on top of that. So there's a lot of guilt there. And I think that also, not because I feel like I should, I know that my work is life changing. There's a reason why people pay me in full to thousands of dollars to work with me and get crazy results, because I know my business, or not my business, but my work is worth that. Or not even worth it. My work, I feel like what I have to offer is beyond worth, like beyond priceless. Like it's not even, I can't even put worth on it. But I think also just doing digital products and making them more available to everybody, I like that. And so I'm just curious if anybody thinks they have it around money. So I, again, like my story is like being in countries where I make so much money, right? The other one is guilt around those of us, like our partners or our families or our friends, that are like, oh, well, you can't make money that easily. And it's easier for us to go along with that story than it is to actually stand in our power and be like, yeah, I can. And a few of you have experienced this, where, you know, you've had these big cash, like whether it was a cash month or a day or whatever, but then feeling into the guilt from the perspective of everybody around me has this projection of making money easily. Like, who am I to make money easily? So I just want you to really think about that. Like, what are my stories around guilt, right? What are my stories around guilt around money? And maybe you know, maybe you don't, and that's okay. But noticing how your body feels when I say that. Do I have guilt around money? Do I feel like, do I feel like people will judge me if I have a lot of money? If you feel like people will judge you if you have a lot of money, or you make it too easy, right? Like, you know, I was also raised in a dynamic where my grandparents both, well, so I don't know if you guys know this, like my dad was first generation Greek, right? So coming from a a family like that, I mean, I had it on both sides. Like, you work hard, you work hard, you work hard, right? And so the guilt that I have, and I don't know if guilt is the word, but I still sabotage sometimes. Like, I'll have an easy high cash month and I'll just put so much stuff on my plate because I feel bad about like making it too easy, right? So just getting really clear on what those stories are. And I'm just going to read in the chat, and we're going to play around with some stuff, and we're going to really get clear. And guys, if you have a fear of judgment, there's usually a touch of guilt in there somewhere, right? Maybe you would never have thought, oh, I have guilt. But if you are like, have a fear of judgment, usually we don't have a fear of judgment if we don't actually feel bad about the thing that we're being judged for. Either we might feel bad about it, and or it's something that we think is true about ourselves that we don't like, right? Can be both ways. Yeah, that's a good one, Kelsey. That's a good one, right? Like, just being able to like get out of that trading time for dollars, right? Feels like a new era in my business. I work for my business foundations. I dealt with shame, I guess. I also the feeling of being over. Yes, I so hear all of that, Margot. And just so you know, you're not the only one. And even for somebody like me, I deal with this. You know, like I don't know how many people from Instagram would be like, oh, Farron's a seasoned business person because, I don't post a lot. But anybody in my world that sees like, the income that I make and the results I get my clients, I think they'd be like, oh, you're a proper, um, business coach or whatever, but manifestation coach or whatever people call me. I don't even know. But even I deal with that, right? I'm literally overhauling my whole business right now, and how I'm going to show up for my business. And it feels really, really liberating. And also, I think I'm saying this because I want everybody to have permission that if something doesn't feel right in your business, that it's because, I mean, there can be a lot of reasons, but sometimes it's just because you're trying to make something work that's out of alignment and you're doing it because you feel like you should. Or like for me, like, the amount of money I want to make, it makes sense to do high ticket one-to-one, but I don't want to be on calls. Like I live the life I live so I could have more freedom. If I want to go spend, a month in Bali, I want to be able to do that. And with a lot of, not even a lot, even just the few, I think I had 4 or 5 spots for one-to-one, and they've been pretty full consistently. And now I'm down to 2 spots. One of those are filled. I have one other one. And then outside of that, I'll just be doing passive income and the membership or maybe some other like pop-up things. But like the point is that I was trying to make a business model work for me that wasn't really what I wanted. It was more out of fear of like, I don't know how to do groups or I don't know how to do passive income or whatever, than it was in alignment. But my brain was so sneaky that it was like, oh, well, it's just out of alignment, you know? So being mindful of like when we make decisions out of fear versus it actually being in alignment or out of alignment. And so just giving ourselves full permission to want what we want. And when something doesn't feel right, to have the courage to admit it and say it out loud and then pivot. Now, if you're consistently things don't feel right, that's something different, right? Like we don't want to get like give ourselves away to always be like squirrel and then always be, running after the next thing and then nothing ever gets done. But to really slow down and really allow ourselves to just be in this wildly imaginative place of like, what do I really want? When I think about my day, I don't want to be on calls. I mean, I love you guys, but like I like maybe 2 calls a week, right? I don't want to be any more than that. So the membership and maybe, whatever. I don't post on Instagram because I'm fully focused and my intuition tells me to do. Yeah, that's so good. Good to notice. And we're gonna play around with this today. Okay. And I want you, so let me be very clear. Our intuition will never lead us astray, especially from an aligned place. However, I'm always very mindful about telling people from a business perspective, like you can just rely on your intuition. I think for me, it's more about learning how to weave intuition in with the strategic part, right? Um, because as person like in the business industry, like I would never want people to just think that they can go and like intuit their way to like a 6-figure business, right? So yeah, I think being able to step into your power and your intuition is by far the best thing that anybody could ever give you, the best gift you could ever give yourself. And no strategy will ever do as well as that. But that we still have to take action in our strategy and just find the strategy that feels the best and feels good, right? So I love that. Okay. So I want you guys to just take a minute to have a few breaths here, really allowing yourself to arrive here in this moment. If the people on this call with me, with us, and notice if your body wants to stretch. I've been stretching a lot, moving my body, taking deep belly breaths, really focusing on breathing in the belly instead of the chest. And just noticing if there's any resistance to it. Is there any resistance to slowing down? Is there any resistance to being in your body, to feeling in your body? Just noticing. And if there is, that's okay. We're not here to judge it. We're just noticing how we're feeling. Is our brain going crazy? Is our body, yeah, is our body wanting to move? and just being okay and noticing that if your brain is kind of being really active, just being okay with it being active will calm it down just a little bit. It's just the resistance to where we're at that kind of creates more resistance, right? And just breathing into it, breathing into the uncomfortable sensations if they're there, breathing into even the mind chatter. If you want to imagine, the mind chatter is in a balloon and the balloon is just floating away, and you hear the mind chatter, but maybe it feels and hear sounds further away. And know that it'll go as far away as feels safe for you, and that's okay too. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And the next thing I'm going to say is I want you to really track your body with this, because your body is probably going to tense up and your mind's going to be like, don't do it. But I want you to go back to a memory when you felt guilt or guilty. Either one, just pick one. And it doesn't need to be any particular memory. Just trust the memory that pops up. And if you guys can just like thumbs up or drop in the chat so I know everybody is where they need to be, just let me know. When a memory pops up, felt guilty, had guilt. Yeah, thank you, Heather. Just going into that memory and knowing that you're safe to go there. Like, don't get outside of your window of tolerance, but going there with the intention to learn something from it, because the guilt is just trying to give us information. That's all. Just trying to give us information. And just, Heather, I know that you've already got there, so if you need to kind of like step out of the memory for a little bit, I don't want you hanging out in guilt, but we all want to get to a point where we've had guilt. And it's we all have guilt as adults, but there's probably some few as children as well. So just allowing yourself to go back to a time when you had guilt and just letting me know when you're there so I know we're on the same page. Amazing. And I want you to just kind of notice like the memory. Are you associated in, meaning are you in the first person, right? Like you're not the second person, you're not looking at you. I imagine that if you're feeling guilt can be a very intense sensation. So you're probably first person. It's probably close, it's probably colorful, it probably feels loud, it probably feels big, and just noticing what it looks like. Okay. And then I just want you to let the memory go and just let it know, hey, we're coming back. We're not leaving you, but for now, I just want to let you go. So whatever you need to do to let it go, whether you need to put it in a balloon and watch it float away, you need to put it in a box and just set it off to the side, but just letting it go for now, coming back to a neutral space, almost like you're just clearing the screen in front of you. Okay. Yeah, amazing. So now I want you to find your joy, right? And this may be a memory, but it may also be in your body. So scan your body. Where does joy live in your body? What does it feel like? What color is it? And if you need to source it from a memory, that's okay too, right? The most joyful time that you've ever had. So for me, I don't need to source it from a memory because I feel it. It's very much in my stomach. There's some here in my face, and it's like orange, like yellow orange, like sunset colors, and it just makes me smile, right? Joy lives in my body. I don't have to do anything to remember it. It's already a part of me. So I want you to just notice that and just experience your joy the way that you experience it. And if you're having trouble with this, again, go to a memory, a time when you felt the most joyful and most present. Your brain is probably starting to calm. Your breathing has started to slow. And just notice what joy and presence feels like in your body. Breathing long and deep, letting yourself remember what joy feels like in your body. Is everyone there? I just want to check in with you guys. Amazing. And now we're just going to play with joy. We're just going to play. Childlike curiosity. We're going to make it as big as we can. You can even talk to it. You can ask it questions, but we want to sit in this joy for a bit because we're going to do something kind of crazy with it. And I also want you to understand that anything is possible from this joy, right? Joy is that powerful. There's a reason why we manifest from like joy or childlike curiosity or anything's possible energy because it's powerful. And so, if anything is possible from this place, you can ask joy whatever you want. Hey, what's the next step? Ask it a question that for an answer you've been searching for. It has wisdom for you, just like the guilt has wisdom for you, so does joy. And I'm just going to hold space here for you to really get to know this part of you that lives inside of you that's always here. Get to know what it feels like in your body. Can you make friends with it? If joy doesn't come a lot, you can say, "Hey, why aren't you here a lot? How can I invite more of you in my life? How can I ask you to drive the car?" I like to use the car analogy of like, if there's all these different parts of me or in the car, who's driving? And for me, I would love Joy to drive more. So it's like, okay, what do you need to drive? What do the other parts of us need to create space for Joy in the car? These are just some questions and with fun. For this is not hard. This is just really light, really simple. What do we need to create more of this in our life? What do we need to do to allow Joy to drive the car? What do we need to do to have joy in our business? That is also something that I've seen help people manifest very crazy stuff in their business with to literally have more joy in their business because their brain wasn't flagging it as unsafe. For me, I haven't been showing up for my business fully because I've kind of lost the joy in my business, and figuring out how to bring that back into it has been, now it's fun, but at the beginning it was a little rocky, right? How can I bring more joy in my business? How can I bring more play into my business? I know that we all are in adult shaped human body, but we're all still kids at heart. And the most magical thing that we could ever give ourselves is to connect back to play and connect back to joy and then making money from it. Like, what a magical gift that we have to be able to do that. And any aha moments, any insights that you get, make sure that you're noting it or writing it down of like, wow, Joy's saying this to me. I need to shift this, or I get to do this, or wow, there's this topic that I love to talk about, and I just want to talk about that. Yeah, yeah. And guys, this is coming up so much with my private clients right now is like this wanting to play. It's okay to want to play as adults. It's okay to want to make money from it. It's okay to make money from it. It's okay if we don't work so hard for money, right? And notice if there's even resistance to that. Just me saying that. There probably won't be as much resistance because you're in the state of joy, but just noticing that if there's any like, oh yeah. Because if there is, if your body starts to tense up, that's a story that we get to work on, right? So when you feel like you're really embodied in joy and you've got it as big as you can get it and you've got all the answers, or not all the answers, but you've had a complete conversation, you just let me know. And I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit. Just let me know when you're there. You can take all the time. There's no rush. Because I only have one person with a camera, so I'm just like trying to gauge the best I can. Okay. So now from this place, I want you to pick up the old memory, the one with guilt. So if you had a balloon, bring it back. If you had a box, bring it back. Go back to that memory and let me know when you're there in the memory. Okay. All I want you to do is rewind the memory. Go it as quickly as possible. Zzz, rewind it, rewind it, rewind it, all the way to the beginning and hit pause. And now again, going back into joy. So now in your body, you're embodying joy, right? All the colors that were there, all the feelings, all the sensations, all the thoughts, this idea that anything's possible. Once you feel like you're embodied in joy, I want you to hit play on the memory and watch what happens. Go ahead, I'm hitting play when you're ready. Watch what happens from this place. Either the whole memory will shift, or how you responded to what happened in the memory shifts. So just let me know that the memory did shift, because then I'm going to explain why and why we did this. Amazing. So, why do you think that the memory shifted? It's because of how you were feeling, your baseline, your perception of where you were at that time. So that means that at any given time, we can choose joy or whatever else and then respond from that place. That's literally, quite literally reality creation, right? That it can just be that simple of like, okay, and I just want to show you that how our brains, so basically the way memories work, and we've talked quite a bit about this. So majority of our memories aren't even accurate. We've got the data on that. And actually there is, I want to say it was from Yale, but it's posted in the Facebook group from the last time we used the Facebook group, that most of our memories aren't real. Every time that we recall a memory, our brain has to put together all the pieces of the memory, but that includes not just the visual, includes the sensations and the feelings and the thoughts and the emotions and all of that. And how we feel when we recall the memory matters. So that means that we're walking around with a bunch of memories that probably aren't even true, trigger us or letting it make us feel guilty or shame or whatever, when all actuality that probably isn't anything that ever even happened. And that's not to make anybody feel bad, it's to empower you, to show you that you can change not only your memories, but your reality. Your current reality is just a reflection of what you remember to be true. But if we can change the memories, we can change our past and therefore change how we show up for the now. And that's how we shift our future, right? And we'll see this, like, I use this example a lot, but like in your partnership, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, and there's some sort of fight happening and you can tell, but instead of you getting triggered and responding from a trigger place and then them responding from a trigger place, you stop and then you respond differently. And then ironically, they respond differently. And then literally you're in a new reality. That's literally reality creation. We can do that with our clients. We can do that with money. We can do that with our business. We can do it with our partners. And this is how you do it. I just want to show you that you can change this. And I'm also curious from this place, if you go back to a point in your business where you had guilt, maybe it's I should be posting more. Maybe I feel guilty because I make money with ease and none of my friends do, and they have a lot of judgment. Maybe it's whatever it is, but I want you to go back to a time in your business where you had guilt. And just let me know when you're there. Yeah, self-love. I love how much self-love comes up for you these days. Great. Is everyone there? Yeah. Okay. So now I want you to notice from guilt what you do, right? So if it's like, I need to be posting more, and I'm using that as an example because that is my example, right? Like, oh, you need to be online more. What do? I beat myself up more. Does it actually make me post more? No, it gives me more anxiety and then I want to post less. It's actually like my brain thinks it's actually, what's the word? Like motivating me to get something done, but really it's making things worse. So I've been really on this kind of self-love journey too of anytime I catch myself being mean to myself, I'm just like, I love myself, even if I am being lazy or not posting or feeling overwhelmed, right? I want you to just notice that whatever you're doing out of guilt, is it actually helping? And maybe it is. Like, there's no right or wrong answer here, but like, is it actually helping? Getting really clear on that. Yeah, exactly. Makes me do less. Fills my joy, my intuition. Yep. So just noticing what we're doing out of guilt. And this isn't just in our business, guys. This is everything. This is maintaining friendships, maintaining relationships, being in a niche we don't like, letting people walk all over us, like anything out of guilt or out of what's the word? Sorry, guys, I'm still a little um like have to. What's the word I'm looking for? Like out of obligation, right? And obligation isn't quite the same as guilt, but like noticing when we do things out of joy and stuff that lights us up, that puts us more on our path, that makes us vibrate higher versus stuff that we're doing because we should or we have to. Now, guys, I'm not saying like don't go pay your bills. Like that's not what like I'm not saying like don't do anything that you should do, but just any sort of obligation. Notice the difference, especially in your business, how it feels. And if it actually takes you closer to your goal or further away, I guarantee it takes you further away because whatever you want in your business is to probably feel empowered and safe and free. And I guarantee you what you're doing out of obligation and guilt is not bringing those feelings and sensations, right? We want to align those things. The other thing that I want you to do, hold on. So like what you're doing out of guilt, especially in your business, is it working? And if it is, great. If you're one of those people that like love tough love and get stuff done, but noticing that if it is actually helping, that it's not sustainable, right? I was going to ask you guys to do something, and I cannot remember what I was going to ask you to do, but I'm sure it'll come back around. But I do want to ask you now to again go back to joy. Turtle. Yeah, right. And that's something that I feel like we've talked about before about this like feeling of like I'm going back in, right? But if you bring joy into that memory, you paint that memory those colors of joy. You start sitting like joy, breathing like joy. Joy's there. You can see it. Maybe there's a person that represents joy there. What happens in the memory now? Softens it. Yeah. And have a lot of fun here. Like it's your like coloring book. Paint it. Make it feel good. Like paint every crevice. And if you really want to take it to the next level, put some, unconditional love in there. Unconditional love is one of the highest vibrations that we could ever have. And notice how the memory will shift. And I'm getting to a point with this, but I want you guys to shift that memory completely. And when you do this, this is literally your own path to what you want. When I feel this, I'm out of alignment. So when I feel guilt, I'm out of alignment. So I'm going to revise the memory and move from there. I want you to start creating your own like toolkit. When I feel this, I do this and it shifts and I can move from there. Start figuring out what works for you. This is a really easy one, but tapping could be one, bilateral stimulation can be one, right? Like we have tools to help soften the negative sensations and feelings, right? And it's like, okay, can I go into joy from there? So I mean, I'm curious, and from a business perspective, what changes? Like, what can you do to bring more joy in? Is it trying to communicate with you? Hey, this is what I'm trying to communicate. Because negative emotions and positive ones are all just trying to communicate. And if you can just have the space held for you to actually hear what it's trying to tell you, you're going to be so much more ahead of the game. So are there any kind of aha moments? Is there any sort of like, oh, well, next time I do this, then this is how I'm going to handle it. Next time I'm feeling really overwhelmed or really guilty, I'm going to do this. Overthinking it all. And that's okay. At some point, your brain was like, oh, overthinking equals good. It's okay. But we get to, instead of like hating on the fact that we overthink, I don't know if that's your relationship with it, but I know it's my relationship with it, equals control. But I think we low key judge ourselves for it, right? I do. Instead of that, it's like, can I just love it? Right? Can I just be like, oh, because you're a mom, you know how to love. You know that feeling of unconditional love. And asking it, what do you need? Right? And if it's control, it's probably safety. It's probably asking for safety. Right? So if it was a kid, if it was one of your kids, how would you give it that feeling of safety? I'm here. I've got you. I hear you. That's the most important thing. It just wants to be seen and heard. I hear you. I hear, yeah, a hug. I hear what you're saying. Right? I just see Kelsey writing, so I'm going to give her a minute. Okay. So now I want you to write down what was guilt trying to tell me? Because it was literally just trying to tell you something. So my guilt would be like, you need to be more consistent because consistency equals safety. Yes, I do make good money not doing a lot. However, it's still really hard on my nervous system when I'm not being consistent. The irony for me is that I never had consistency growing up. So consistency is ironically the thing that will create the most safety, but because it feels so foreign to me, it creates the most like anxiety, right? I deeply long for consistency, but my brain perceives it as unsafe because it feels so foreign, right? So that's my own work to do. But for me, what this guilt was trying to communicate was I feel guilty for not showing up the way I should. Oh, well, it's just really trying to show me you are concerned about safety and you get safety from consistency. And we have to figure out a way to show up consistently that feels safe. Does that make sense? I feel like that was really wordy and I feel like it makes sense to me because it's my story. But does it make sense for you guys to get clear on what your guilt was just trying to tell you? What's the lesson that it was trying to tell you? It might be, oh, well, when I guilt trip myself, I motivate myself to get shit done. Any of you like are like the people that do shit last minute. Like I'm such a procrastinator. So oftentimes like being guilting myself does actually help me. But I have to just be mindful of first of all, I choose that. I don't have to do that. And second of all, it's not sustainable and I'm over being mean to myself. If that was my child doing that, I'd be like mortified. I'd be like, please don't be mean to yourself like that. Right. I don't need to know the next step. Yeah. And sometimes just taking the pressure off of needing to know or needing to do it right and just show up and just be yourself is sometimes like the best thing that you can do until you get to a point where it's like, oh, I know if you guys really struggle with showing up consistently, which Heather I know doesn't, but Margot, I'm not sure. I know that you're in a big transformation in your business, but like if you ever deal with that, the best way I could say is just do it in a way that feels so fun until it gets to a point where it feels familiar and then you can get more strategic with it. But showing up, in a fun, messy way is better than not showing up at all, right? So now that you've got the lesson from guilt, because the guilt will lessen now that you actually have listened to it, right? So if yours was also with money, because I know I know people have guilt with money. So it might be making money too easily, or I make money, working from home and my friends, judge me for it or whatever. What do you think guilt was trying to tell you then? Guilt was trying to show me that I'm not safe from other people's judgments. Yeah, well, the thing about that is that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the way that you mean that, but none of us are exempt, but we can offer ourselves safety so they don't take us out of the game. So we don't care as much, right? Like for me, I feel like that's a motto is like, it's safe for me to like, for people to judge me. Cause I know like people are always going to judge me. The only thing that I can do is control if I care or not, if it bothers me or not. And this is not saying I don't care when I actually do. I mean, actually healing that part of us that's triggered by being judged. So when people judge us, it actually doesn't bother us. That's when you know that you've healed. If you can go back to an old situation that used to trigger you and it no longer triggers you, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's their shit. That's their judgment. That's their story. It has nothing to do with me. Yeah, good, good. And sometimes the progress is slow, and that's okay too, right? Like we're human. We're all doing the best we can. So now I want you to write down what do you think the lesson that joy had for you, or has, not had, has, because you're moving forward from joy. Everything is your mirror. Everything has wisdom if you just slow down enough to listen. And these little nuggets of wisdom will take you so far in life, in your business, with money. Yes, you are. And if you ever need a reminder, you just let me know and I'm happy to just like, chant it out for you. Like, yes, you are. You are lovable and worthy and all the things. Right. Thank you. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out like I feel like eventually like I'm gonna have like, people on my team that can go through and like pull out these little mantras just so you guys can have them to like listen to. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I try to be mindful of how I can serve you guys the highest capacity that I can, within my limited capabilities and charging like $50 a month, right? But I try to be mindful of it. I try to be like, how can I like serve you guys and, give you guys mantras and give you guys things, even if it's bite sized to do every day. So we'll see if that comes, but I do set the intention to the universe quite often of, hey, how do I do this easily? Because I don't have space for it, but I have so much content that I feel like could be repurposed into it. So maybe one day there'll be like a 30-day drip like thing and like you get like a little email. I don't know. We'll see. I'm putting it into the universe. Universe, that's what I'm meant to do. And if that's going to serve people, you just let me know. Show up and show me the way, right? Be curious, laugh, have fun. If it's forced, it's not for me. 30-day drip, yeah, like a little drippy drip, yeah. So I'm not good with doing stuff like that. It has to be like repurposed from other stuff. But I feel like I have so many videos that I feel like somebody could do that if I gave them the thing to do it. So yeah. Okay. So is there any sort of like aligned action that comes forward from joy? It's like, okay, in my business, if I was leaning from joy and instead of guilt or with money, what would I be doing different? Aligned action is really important, even if the action is like to go and meditate or to take a day off. And sometimes it's like, well, to get my shit together and like put together a posting schedule. Like, trust that your intuition knows what's right for you, right? But the reason that we always have aligned action is neuroscience perspective is that we have to ground it into, okay, when I have an aha moment, I listen to it, I trust it, and I take action on it. It's self trust, but then it also patterns it in our body. That's why it's so important when you have those aha moments to actually take action on them. It's developing self trust, and a lot of people don't get to where they want with money and or their business because they don't have self trust. That's the truth. And I'm re-releasing. I told Heather this last week, but I'm re-releasing Powerfully You. It's pre-recorded, but it's so powerful. Like I've been re-listening to the videos and they're like crazy powerful. So I think I'm gonna sell that. It's like a 5 call like series for like $250, something like that. But I think I might re-release a new version at some point, and maybe even do it live. But it's so powerful. And that was one of the things that we were talking about in Powerfully You was like self-trust is a big thing. Whether or not you trust, like it's whether or not you trust yourself to get what you want and hold it, but also trust yourself to listen to your intuition and take action on it, but also trust yourself to navigate it if things go wonky. Self-trust is a really big thing. I would say empowerment and self-trust are probably the two biggest things that I see really making a shift in people when they pattern that stuff in their body. Like what would be different in your business and in your life if you learn to listen to your intuition and take action on it like that? Sometimes we don't do it because we don't have the space for it. And if you're in this place where you don't have the space for it, know that that's okay. I've been there too. It's a part of the journey. It's okay. Like there's no judgment, but you'll get to a point where you just work on all the shit that's taking up space so much that it'll just dissipate. And then you just have all the space, which Heather, I don't know if this is true for you, but I would imagine that that was kind of similar of like chipping away at all these things that you felt like kept like holding you back to create more space to do something like the Rich Girl Reels challenge to create these $1,000 sales days, right? Like it had to do with the capacity and space that you had. So when we're allowing all these things, the negative things, right? Yeah, for sure. Exactly. So like the guilt, the shame, the stories, the overwhelm to take up so much space that we don't have any capacity. But when we work on all the things that are taking up that space, all of a sudden we have all this space and we're like, oh, okay. And then we get to work on things like self-trust and taking action on things that feel good and light and inspired. But just know that if you're in the space where you don't have the capacity yet, it's okay to be there. I don't want anybody judging themselves. I get like that sometimes. Overwhelm is a real thing, especially women. Like, I can't even imagine being a mom and having a business and having a job. Like, I can't even imagine that. I get overwhelmed all the time, and I just have me, and I live a pretty cushy life. Like, I can't even imagine. So just know that if you are there, that it's okay too. But I just want to show you that there is another way. There is a way to tap into these parts of yourself that do trust and do know the answers and do feel safe to move forward, right? And holding the duality of learning how to dip your toes and into that and listen to it, and also being radically okay with I'm overwhelmed and I'm going slow, and that's okay too, right? It's the duality, learning how to balance it. So if there was anything, just note it. Okay, I want to do this in my business, or I want to do this with money. Noting what that is, having that aligned action. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to write down when I feel guilt, when I feel overwhelmed, whatever it is that takes you out of the game, I will. right? So you have a plan. I'm gonna think back to joy, that memory that brought me joy, and then I'm gonna move from there. I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna tap on it, right? So you have a plan. Our brains love plans. When we tell our brain, hey, if things go wrong, which inevitably they will, they'll go sideways. I've got a plan. I've got you. That will go so far to just be like, oh, this is the learning. This is how I navigate it. If I ever feel like that again, this is what I'm going to do. Easier said than done. We're not perfect. I don't expect you guys to perfectly do this moving forward, but try. From childlike curiosity, just play around, see what happens. How's everybody feeling? And again, the biggest takeaway here is that you can shift your reality and how you create your reality right now. Okay, today. And I hope that feels empowering because it's meant to be empowering. You do create your reality and you get to do all these little things that feel right for you. I don't want to put more things on your plate. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. To shift these things, to start creating your reality in a way that feels right for you, that feels good to you. And notice that if you ever have something like guilt or shame or something negative, that it just has wisdom for you and that you can ask it what it's trying to tell you and then shift it. If you start doing that, I promise you, your reality will start to change. I plan to do one a day short taping and stuff. I love that. Please keep us posted on that. I think that's amazing. Short tapping and self visualization for 2 minutes. Yeah. If you guys did that, I'm telling you, it's, and here's a little trick to that. If anybody ever is like, oh my gosh, that sounds so good, but then you get overwhelmed with it, the trick is to be like, it's 2 minutes because your brain will freak out. Your brain likes specificity. So it's like, okay, I'm going to set a timer and I'm only going to do it for 2 minutes, right? And that will help your brain feel less overwhelmed from putting something else on your to-do list. So always, if you have these little bite-sized things, be like, I'm going to give myself X amount of time to do it. So your brain doesn't freak out of like, I'm overwhelmed. I already have too much stuff to do. And now you're putting something else on my list. Oh my gosh. Even if it is 2 minutes, be like, I'm going to take 2 minutes to do this and I'm going to set a timer. And notice immediately your body will start to be like, oh, I can do that. Right. Your brain just needs to understand how much time things are going to take when you feel overwhelmed. That's all that is. I hope this is helpful. If you guys need anything, post in the Facebook group. If you have things you want me to cover, if like, y'all, you're welcome. If you have anything, just anything at all. Okay. And just let me know how it goes to Heather specifically for you. I want to know how this is going to go for you. I hope you guys have the best weekend, the best Easter. It's been all the good time with your families, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody. You're welcome.